maybe you can convince me that we need to support a regime change war in Iran. Tell me how that plays out in a country of 90 million people. Have you thought it through? Do you even care? And the answer is no.
If Donald Trump were to have one potent advocate in the media space, it would be Joe Rogan, wouldn't it? But if it were two, it would be Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson. Now, what I think is interesting about this conversation that Tucker's had with Steve Bannon is that he appears to have a lot of affection and respect for Donald Trump. And I suppose anyone who's lived in the public eye, who's seen how Donald Trump has dealt with attacks, anyone who's tried to make money, anyone who's tried to deal with building regulations has got to have some kind of begrudging respect for Trump. Anyone who loathes the legacy media and the political class and the intelligentsia and their ongoing deceptiveness and the way that they divide us from one another and pretend that they care when in fact it's control are going to have a degree of respect for Donald Trump. But here is Tucker Carlson managing his disappointment that the pledge that there would be no more forever wars appears to be breached. Now, do you think the simple fact is this? Anyone talking about campaigning about how they will govern before they're in a position of power is going to make certain missteps? Or do you feel that there's something darker and deeper at play here, in essentially that it don't matter what people say when they're campaigning? When they're in a position of power, true power asserts and war resumes. Let's have a look at Tucker saying that involvement in this conflict will end his presidency. This is a conversation between Tucker and Bannon.
And you know the Iraq situation.
This isn't a regime change effort, and why not just say that? But you're a Holocaust denier for saying that. Well, stop. Let's have a rational conversation about what our aims are here. And maybe you can convince me that we need to support a regime change war in Iran. Tell me how that plays out in a country of 90 million people. Have you thought it through? Do you even care? And the answer is no. We have a economic and political and demographic crisis in Europe because of U.S.-backed, Israel-backed
Syria
wars in the Middle East.
Yep.
That's what's destroyed Europe, where my ancestors came from. And I spent a lot of time there, and I love European culture, which is Christian culture. And it's destroyed that. And, shut up, you're not allowed to care. Who's making the rules here? I don't hate anyone. I don't see conflict with anyone at all. I have no weird biases. All my biases are out in the open. But I really resent being told who my enemy, especially with foreigners. Some foreigner shows up and tells you who your enemies are. Really? I've been here a long time. I live across from my parents' graves. You can't tell me who America's enemies are. Or at least I have a right to weigh in on that also. Oh, shut up, says Mark Dubowitz or something. It's like, are you even from here? What do you mean? Who are you anyway? This is so bonkers. I don't hate Mark Dubowitz. I don't hate his agenda. What I hate, I disagree with his agenda. I'm not mad at him. I'm not mad at any of these people fundamentally. But what I seek is an honest, open, transparent conversation about what we're doing and why. And I don't think that's too much to ask for, considering it's my tax dollars and my money that you're seeking to use to achieve it. If that's radical, then, we've distorted the terms beyond recognition.
So this is, I suppose, now a bit of a spat between Tucker Carlson and Donald Trump. Here's Trump responding to Tucker's...
In response to Tucker Carlson criticizing you, saying that you're complicit in the war.
I don't know what Tucker Carlson is saying. Let him go get a television network and say it so that people listen.
And quickly,
Thank you.
Zelensky before your bylaws.
Oh, okay then. So I suppose that's a sort of a little bit of a rebuke. Here's Candace Owens on the subject. Donald Trump just completely fractured his base, and he did it for the very neocons who minted the Never Trump movement. Truly unbelievable. Here's Jones on the same subject. Trump attacking Tucker Carlson for not supporting a new world war is not something any sane person would support. And here's Marjorie Taylor Greene backing Tucker Carlson as well. Tucker Carlson's one of my favourite people. He fiercely loves his wife, children, and our country. Since being fired by the neocon network Fox News, he has more popularity and views than ever before. He unapologetically believes the same thing as I do. That if we don't fight for our own country and our own people, then we will no longer have a country for our children and our grandchildren. And foreign wars, intervention, regime change put America last, kill innocent people, and are making us broke and will ultimately lead to our destruction. That's not kooky. It's what millions of people voted for. That is what we believe. Has anyone got an alternative opinion to that? Because I suppose Tucker Carlson, I love him. I know him. And he's, I suppose, really significant in my personal journey. When I first met him, he was still on Fox News and I was probably just on YouTube. He was super kind to me. I've met his family. I know about his integrity. I've prayed with him. I've spent time with him. I know Tucker Carlson and I really love him. And he's one of the first people I met, I suppose, that made me realise people on the right are more open and honest than a lot of people I've met on the left. This is a lesson that I've been learning over a long time, primarily in UK media. When I aspired as a little blue-collar Essex boy to be part of the intelligentsia, to make a living out of performing, when I was first in newspapers like The Guardian, I thought, oh, look, I've made it. When I first sort of wrote about football in my country and had a column in The Guardian, I felt really approved of. And then when I met the people that actually worked at those organisations, it was kind of harrowing and awful. There's this sort of snobbery and elitism that's visceral and real. Probably like you, I'm not capable of holding a global conflict in my arms and analysing it. Like, oh, well, it is complex. What would happen if Iran developed nuclear weapons? And what about this revolution and that revolution? And what about Israel this? And what about the Balfour Treaty? I can't understand that. You can't understand it. No one can understand it. How different is it when you speak to someone that's been personally affected? It's like, oh, I've got friends in Tel Aviv and their house got blown up. Or the fact is, I know someone in Tehran and their cousin's just been killed. Suddenly you're like, oh, shit, man. This thing's real. This isn't your Nan's free dried sadness in a tin. This isn't the dregs of a wrung out sanitary product. This is real coffee. You don't sip it, you experience it. It breaks into your subconscious like a caffeinated raccoon rifling through the flaming garbage and screams, rise, you beautiful dumpster wizard. History isn't going to rewrite itself. 1775 coffee is single origin, high altitude, organic, small batch roasted beans. This coffee makes you feel seen, makes you feel alive, makes you feel like charging into Parliament on horseback with a scroll of forbidden knowledge and a cinnamon stick. So if you're drinking something brewed for equity, packaged for compliance and roasted for softness, spit it out. Get yourself a proper brew, Bonnie Blue. Spit it out fast. Go to 1775coffee.com/brand and lock in on their starter kit with free coffee and merch. Looking at you lot in the chat, a lot of people like Tucker. A lot of people think Tucker's mistaken in this instance. How are you guys responding to these recent posts? That's the one I was reading earlier. Unconditional surrender. That's presumably what Trump demands of Iran. We know exactly where the so-called supreme leader is hiding. He's an easy target. He's safe there. We're not going to take him out. Kill, exclamation mark. At least not for now. But we don't want missiles shot at civilians or American soldiers. Our patience is wearing thin. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I do like that sign off, I have to say. The other post. We now have complete and total control of the skies over Iran. Iran had good sky trackers and other defensive equipment and plenty of it, but it doesn't compare to American-made, conceived and manufactured stuff. Nobody does it better than the good old USA. Now, Trump is creating an incredible empire, whether it's his commercial enterprises or a sort of new standard of vernacular when directly communicating with a nation that elected him with an extraordinary mandate. I don't know how aware you lot were during the campaign period of secondary voices in peripheral spaces saying that even someone who seems like as much as an outlier as Trump does will ultimately end up being controlled by the permanent sets of power that exist in Washington. Now, look, I've been involved in this game not that long, but long enough to know that everything that I think I know is sort of meaningless, temporary, transient and perishable. But how do you feel, for example, when you see Dan Bongino and Kash Patel prior to entering their positions of authority in the FBI saying, you know, this Epstein matter is something that's going to be deeply revelatory, and then once they're in power saying, look, we've seen the files, this is as much as we can tell you.
I've seen the whole file. He killed himself.
I'm not claiming who would to be in a position of authority or on any kind of podium from which to judge people that deal with levels of power and authority that it's sort of almost inconceivable, dazzling and baffling. In fact, all I can say here as a kind of wild and mad man on the edge of town, a sort of outcast of this world, of 1,000 worlds now, Hollywood, various institutions, just bewildered by the vicissitudes of power, bewildered and exhausted by what happens if you're outspoken in these places. The things that you'll likely deal with is this. The systems and institutions themselves are the problem. They are conduits for darker forces than any individual or even sets of individuals can counter, particularly because those individuals have their own flaws, their own failings, their own fallibility, whether you're talking about an extraordinary and unique man like Donald Trump, well-intentioned and brilliant people like Bobby Kennedy, or you and I. Indeed, much of my personal ideology is forged from the folk traditions of the 12 steps, where we're fond of saying things like, we're all insane in here, but not on the same day. And what's implicit in that is the idea that no one can carry the burden of leadership alone. That all of us have to recognize that we're on our knees, shoulder to shoulder before God, saved by the supreme sacrifice of the Son of the living God. Now, if you're not able to reference something like that when you're setting up systems of government, when you're standing on the edge of a war, then I don't know what you're going to rely on. Economics, geopolitical agenda, the historical imperatives, all of those things I think will fail you. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments and the chat. Whatever this is, this ain't what MAGA campaigned on. Whatever this is, it's not what MAGA campaigned on. They didn't say we'll be back in Israel in a likely war with Iran, did they? That wasn't explicit. They didn't say that the Ukraine-Russia conflict will continue. I think there was a lot of rhetoric all around 24 hours, it'll be over.
I will end that war in one day. It'll take 24 hours.
Now, again, I got to consider my personal position as well as everything else. You know, and here it is. Here's my position. Don't follow leaders, wash your parking meters, in the words of Bob Dylan. You can't really rely on institutions and systems of power that are themselves fallible and flawed. Perhaps from you, one might yield to and lean towards the perspective of the eternal. And from the perspective of the eternal, nations rise, nations fall, governments come and go, leaders with great legacies lost on the wind of history. If your inheritors and your legacy will be as numerous as the sand on the beach, then what does that suggest across the scope of time? None of us are that wonderful, glorious. Certainly none of us are permanent, superior or powerful. So I reckon, man, we need to turn to some eternal principles and some eternal values, and maybe even have a little bit of a laugh while we're here. Thanks for watching the video. Have a look at this one over here, or join us Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday on Rumble.